Hello, this is Christian, and I'm a graphic designer based in Massachusetts. And today we'll be going over 4 ways to make a mandala or circular pattern within Adobe Illustrator. And the 4 methods that we're going to go over are the pattern brush technique, the replace spine technique, the polar grid technique, and the rotate effect technique. So to start off, we're going to do the pattern brush technique. And in Illustrator, you can create your own little pattern here. I just have these 2 objects that we're going to use as patterns. So to create a pattern brush, we're going to select our object. We're going to go into the brushes here. And within brushes on the bottom, we're going to select new brush. And we want a pattern brush. In the pattern brush options, for us, the default is fine, which is fixed, 100%, stretch to fit. Everything looks good. We don't need to worry about corners since we're doing a circular pattern, so this one is fine. Great, so we have our first pattern brush, and you can see it here, pattern brush 1. And for our second pattern, these vertical lines, we're going to drag this into the brush window here, and that's another way to create a new brush. So a new brush, this one we also want to be a pattern brush. Click OK. Everything's going to stay the same in terms of settings. Again, this indicates right here a corner. You can have like a custom corner if you were going to do anything that required it, but for us we don't need that, so we're good, we're okay. Great, so we have pattern brush 1. Oops. So we have pattern brush 1 and pattern brush 2. And in order for us to make a circle pattern or a mandala type graphic, we're going to choose the ellipse tool, which is L. And I'm going to shift and drag to create a circle. Great, so I've got this. And what we're going to do is, with the circle selected, we're going to pick our first pattern, pattern brush 1. And there you go. It's going to be used as the stroke. And you can adjust the stroke weight, making it larger, but it does kind of, maybe change what you initially intended it to be. So I wouldn't deviate too far. If you want it to be very similar to the pattern that you created, you can make it a little smaller. And you can scale this up and down. And for that, I'm holding down Shift, Alt, or Shift Option to scale it. But this is awesome. We've got our first portion of our graphic here. I want to make another circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the ellipse tool and create a smaller circle. In order to align these up, I'm going to select both. I'm going to go into my Align panel here, which if you don't know where it is, it's in Window, Align. I just chose to do the Shift F7 shortcut to get it here. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we have our options, and we're going to do by selection. That way we're going to center these to each other. We're going to center, horizontally align center, and then vertical align center. Perfect. I'm just going to bring this down a little bit. Great. And now I'm going to select our center circle, and I want to use this pattern, which is pattern brush 2. So I'm going to go over here in the brushes window, and I'm going to click. And great, so we've got this pattern. I wanted to touch the pattern before, so I'm going to Shift Option or Shift Alt and drag it out a little bit and a little bit more. That might be a little too much. One more time. Great. Awesome. So that's how you use the pattern brush to create a circular pattern. You can keep going. If I wanted to make a duplicate of this, copy, paste. That's Command C, Command F, or Control C, Control F, and create another version of that. I can also do the same with this. One of the issues with the pattern brush is it does tend to lose some of its original pattern. It doesn't duplicate itself properly. Like, I guess you can see the pattern is changing a little bit. Obviously, if you go into the pattern settings, you could adjust some of these to get kind of what you want. But for our purposes, this is great to demonstrate how to use the pattern brush. And yeah, that's it for the pattern brush. And we'll go ahead and move on to our next technique. All right, so our second technique is the replace spine technique. And to start, we're going to use two objects. In this case, I have two sets of circles. And for the first set, these colored circles, we're just going to move this over a little bit. I'm going to select both, and I'm going to go to Object, Blend, and then Make. And we've got a blend here. Right now it's set to a very smooth gradient, but for our purposes, I want to have it to be specified steps or a certain amount of intervals within our blend. I want it to be a certain specified step. So we're going to go into the blend tool here. We're going to double click on this, and we're going to get the blend options. And within the blend options, we're going to change the spacing from smooth color to specified steps. We're going to preview so we can see how many steps we have. Right now we have 52, which is way too much for what I want. I'm going to try 5. I think 5 is a little too much as well. We're going to do something like 3. Great, so that's about what I want. Great, okay. So I've got that blend. And we're just going to do the same thing with these two bottom circles here. So I'm just going to drag this one out. And I'm going to go to Option, Blend, Make. Great. I think I remembered the specified steps. If I go into the blend tool, double click. The blend options, actually it's on smooth color, so I think for this one it's fine. I'm just going to go to specified steps. I'm going to go to 3 as well. Preview. Great. Okay. All right, so we have these two blends. These will be the basis of our mandala or circular pattern for this technique for our replace spine. So now let's create our circle. We're going to click L to bring our ellipse tool up. You can see that here. And I'm going to shift drag to create a perfect circle. Great. And I'm going to press D to give it a default fill and stroke. And then I'm just going to remove the stroke. Remove the fill, I'm sorry. And now what I want to do is I want to replace the spine of this circle or the stroke of this circle with this blend right here that I have here. So I'm going to select the blend, shift, and also select our circle. I'm going to go to Object, Blend, and Replace Spine. Great. So now you can see that the blend has been applied to our circle. If I select it away, you can see that it's been selected around, and that's awesome. That's great. That's what we wanted. You can see that there is an issue. It's not evenly spaced around here. So how you resolve that issue is to take the scissors tool, shortcut C, and you just click. I like to click on the topmost point, and then boom, there you go. Now they're all evenly spaced. And if we want, I believe we can go back into our blend. We can change our specified steps. And we can come up with a number that maybe is better for our purposes. 8, I think 8 is actually really good here. So as you can see, if you change the number, it changes the amount. But I think 8 is actually a good number for us. Awesome. And in order to get into the blend options, I just double click the object to go into isolation mode. And then I selected our topmost circle. Great. And now I want to make a second circle so we can use our second blend here. And I want to show something different since this is a stroke rather than this as being a fill. So our second circle I'm going to create here. Again, L for the ellipse tool, Shift drag to create a perfect circle. I'm going to choose our selection tool here, V. I'm going to drag and select both objects here. Going to go to our align, Shift F7, or you can just go to Window Align. Great, so we have our align. I'm going to make sure that it's aligned to selection. Great, still like that. Then I'm going to align horizontal center, or vertical center, sorry. And it's not perfect, so it's not exactly what I want. So what I'm going to do instead, so I'm just going to grab the inner circle. I'm going to make it a little smaller. I want to be a little smaller. And I'm going to make it so it intersects. You can get a smart guide. You can see that the smart guide said that it intersected there. You can see, boom, both center points are the same. If you drag and select on both of them, you can see that there's one center point. So we know that if we select our circle, select our blend, we can replace the spine by going to Object, Blend, Replace Spine. Awesome, great. So we have that. And again, we want to make sure that the blend is equally distributed along the circle. So we're going to choose our scissors tool, and that is shortcut C. And then I'm going to click right on the topmost point. Great, now it's evenly distributed. And I'm going to click on our object. I believe you can go into the blend options right here. Yes, awesome. So you don't have to go into isolation mode. You can just select here. And we can change the values, preview to see what we want. Now, we can go even higher than 10, and they can actually start overlapping. Now they're touching. 25, they'll probably be overlapping. Now they can overlap. And if I go and I deselect, you can see it has a nice overlap technique. So you can adjust the spacing how you see fit. And again, I can select the object. I can resize it. And yeah, that's the replace spine technique. You can also just keep continuing to increase the steps. If you really want it to go higher, you can preview it. But yeah, that's the second technique on how to make a mandala or a circular pattern using the replace spine technique. For our third technique, we'll be using what I call the polar grid. Now the polar grid, it is within the line segment tool. You just click on the line segment tool here and it'll bring out this extended menu, and make sure you get the polar grid. With it selected, click on your artboard. Within these options, you can see what I've selected. Well, we might change this later, but for now, 100 by 100 pixels is the size. Concentric dividers will be 5. Radial dividers will be 10, and that's fine. We'll click OK. And it is a little smaller than I would have liked, so I'm going to press V to get our selection tool, and I'm going to just shift and drag it out so I can scale it up. And scale it up a little bit, and I'm just going to position it a little bit higher on our artboard. I also want to increase the stroke weight just so we can see it a little bit more clear. Great, so we have our polar grid here, and this is going to be the basis of creating one slice that we're going to duplicate around. So the first thing I want to do is I want to take this object and I want to transform it. So I'm going to go to Window, and I'm going to bring up the Pathfinder. Within the Pathfinder panel here is Transform. I'm going to go to Transform, and I've got 10 slices here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've got 10 slices. A circle is 360 degrees. Divided by 10 slices, it means that each is 36 degrees. I want to rotate it so that the center point is the center of this slice right here, or any slice rather. And to do that, I want to rotate it by half of one slice. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to rotate. Half of 36 is 18. Great. And now you can see that this slice is in the center. And that's going to be the basis of our slice here. Now, what I want to do is I want to get rid of every other slice, which we'll replace later. But for now, I want to delete them all. I'm going to use the shortcut Shift M, which will bring up the Shape Builder tool, which you can see here, Shape Builder. And with this tool, you can add and subtract different portions of the art here. And what I want to do is I want to subtract everything other than this slice right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select or hold down Shift, Alt, or Option. I'm going to create a box of all the things I want to delete. So I want to delete all of that. I want to delete all of this, the topmost portions, these two portions right here, this. And for the last portion, I'm just going to let go of Shift, and I'm just going to draw a line through anything I want to delete. Awesome. So I've gotten rid of everything I don't need. I'm just going to zoom in, make sure everything looks good. I'm going to hit Control or Command Y to go in outline mode. Just going to zoom in a little bit further. Everything seems to be fine. Zoom out and hit Command or Control Y to return to our regular view. And this is awesome. We've got our slice, but what we want to do is we want to create a symbol so that we can base the rest of the design or the rest of the mandala off of this one slice, so that anything we do within this one slice will be reflected in every other slice that we create. So what we're going to do is, with our object selected, we're going to go to our tools panel here, and we're going to select symbols. We're going to select new symbol, and you can name it whatever you want. New symbol 2 is fine with me. I'm going to change this to graphic, the export type. I'm going to click OK. And now you can see we've got a little plus sign. This is now a graphic. And the first thing we want to do with this symbol is rotate it around this bottom point so that it becomes a perfect circle. And the easiest way for me that I figured out to do this is I want to zoom in, and I don't need to see that. I need to see the center of this stroke here. So I'm going to keep zooming in. I'm going to hit Control or Command Y to go to outline mode. I'm going to keep zooming in until Illustrator doesn't let me zoom in anymore. I'm going to hit R for the rotate tool. I'm going to hold down Alt or Option, and I'm going to go down to the center, the bottommost point of this triangle or this pie. I'm going to click. And now I'm in the rotate options menu here. And I already have it set to 36 degrees because I know I want 10 slices at 36. But if you don't know, if you know you have to divide from 360 to get a circle, divide it by how many slices you have. So for my instances, I have 10 slices. So I want 10 slices to go into 360. So I'm going to divide 360 by 10. And then I'm going to hit Tab. And it's going to give me 36 degrees. I'm going to preview. And as you can see, it's rotated here to the left. That's the original. If I unclick preview, I'll see the original pie slice. If I click it again, I'll see the rotation. And I want to copy this because I want to keep my original, but I want to copy and create this effect. So I've got 2 now. I'm just going to zoom out so I can see what's going on. And then I'm also going to hit Control Y. Zoom back in a little bit more. And now that I've done this transformation, I've transformed the original slice and rotated it, I can hit Control or Command D to transform again. And I'm going to keep doing that to keep going around the circle. Awesome. So now I have a circular shape created from one symbol, and whatever I do to this one symbol will be reflected in all the other symbols. So I'm going to double click our symbol here, and that's fine. Yes, I want to edit. And now I'm in isolation mode. I'm going to zoom in. And the first thing I want to do is I want to select everything. I'm going to reduce the stroke down to 1. I want to see it, but I don't want it to be very overpowering. And I'm going to choose the pen tool with P. I'm just going to start on this endpoint here. I'm going to drag out the pen tool. I'm just going to create an organic shape just so I can show you what's possible. And I know that this starts somewhere here, and I want it to repeat here. It's okay if it's not perfect. We'll fix it later if it's not perfect. Great. So I've got this one. I'm going to increase its stroke weight to 3. Great. And I want to add a couple more elements, so I'm just going to add a circle here, and let's say a circle in the bottom, and let's say a circle in the center here. Great. I'm going to select our original polar grid. This is just kind of like our base. And I'm just going to go to the strokes, and I'm just going to give it none. So now it's just the white. Oh, and then do we have an outside? We do have an outside one. We're going to do the same thing. No stroke. Now that I double click out of the object, you can see that that one slice has been reflected in every other slice or every other symbol. And this is great if you want to create an amazing custom shape, just some very organic mandalas or circular patterns, or you want to have a little bit of flexibility. You just need to worry about that one symbol or that one slice, and you can keep creating. And just to illustrate it a little bit more, so I've got our symbol here. I'm going to double click again just so we can see. Yes, we want to edit it. So this is the pattern that's being repeated. This darker portion, you can see everything grayed, every other symbol grayed out. I'm just going to add a square here. I'll keep it as 1 point is fine, and I'll create another square here, just so you can see. So I've just added one symbol, right? This one symbol, and when I double click outside of this symbol, I'm going to go back to the artboard. You can see that every other symbol has been updated, and the whole pattern is now complete. So you can mess around, figure it out, but that's a third technique, which is the polar grid technique, and we'll move on to the next one. And for our fourth and final technique to make a mandala, we'll be using what I call a rotate effect. So to start, I want to make a object that we will rotate around our center point. So I'm going to start with a square. Just hit M to bring up the rectangle tool, and I just made a square. I'm going to hit the minus key to bring up our delete anchor point. Let's delete this anchor point. I'm going to go to our selection, and I'm just going to rotate this, get this triangle. And I want the point to be a little higher, so I'm going to click A to get our direct selection tool. And I'm just going to shift drag, select our top point, and I'm going to shift drag this up. Great, awesome. So I've got this triangle here. I'm going to change the color to something like a dark blue. Great. And the next thing I want to do is I want to create a very small circle. I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to change the color to red, just so we can see the difference between the two. And with smart guides turned on, and to turn them on, you hit Control U. I'm going to align to the center of the triangle, and then I'm also going to intersect the bottom of it. Perfect, right there. So it's right to the center, right to the bottom. And what I'm going to do, just going to bring this down a little bit. So I'm going to select both. I'm going to group them, Control or Command G. And then next, I'm going to go to Effect, Distort and Transform. Transform. Now I have the Transform Effects options here. And I'm not going to change the scale or move, but I do want to rotate. And everything else is fine here, and copies. So to keep things simple to start with, I'm just going to rotate. I'm going to have 4 copies, so that'd be 90 degrees. And I can preview this. Oh, sorry. First, I want to make sure that the registration point is the bottom center. Excellent. 90 degrees. Preview. All right, so you can see it gives me a nice little outline grade of the previous object. And for this particular one, if I want to create, an arrow, 90 degrees, that would be 4 more. So let me create 4 copies. Now preview will show all 4. But since I'm going to be expanding this out, it's going to be part more of a circle. What I want to do is, let's say I want to create 12 copies, right? 12 copies. What's the angle, the angle of rotation for that? Well, I know that a circle is 360 degrees, and I want to divide that by 12 objects. So I'm just going to go ahead and do 360 divided by 12, hit the tab key, and it's going to give me it. So it's 30 degrees. This will also work if you did 14. So let's say I want 14 copies, 360 degrees divided by 14, tab. Great, so it gives me that. So I'm going to stay with 14. Now one thing is to have 14 objects around this circle, I only need to have 13 copies because I have the initial object and then I have 13 copies of it. So 1 plus 13 will equal 14. So I'm going to make this 13. Great. And I'm going to click OK. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to just click out of that. Now you can see that I have my triangle and it's been rotated and copied all around the center point here. But what I want to do is I don't want to have these so close. I want to be able to make more like a mandala or just a bigger circle. I'm going to drag this closer to the middle of my artboard, and I'm going to double click my triangle to enter isolation mode. I'm going to grab the triangle, and I'm going to shift drag it up. Shift drag it up. And as you can see, everything else changed. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Actually, I'm going to zoom back in. What I'll do instead is I'll shrink the triangle a little bit. So now you can see that what we're doing is we're creating one single, string of objects that will be rotated around this axis. And to further demonstrate, what I'll do is I'll create another circle. I'll change the color to, let's say, black. And I want to try and keep it aligned to the center. So I'm just going to move it over to the center, and once it aligns to the center, great. I'll drag down, make another circle, zoom in so I can increase the size of the circle. Maybe I'll just shift X to swap the stroke and the fill. And this is great if you want to make a pattern that's, starting from the center and going out, and nothing really overlaps, because the issue with this technique is that you can't really have anything off center. I'll demonstrate. So if I grab this circle and take it off the center point, it warps a little bit. So you see that it moved a little bit. So it's no longer perfectly center. You see a little bit more extreme, right? The center points are now, really off. But maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe you want to mess around. You kind of just want to come up with a crazy technique. But it's best if you want to have more predictable results to, keep this center point down. One of the good things about this technique, though, is that you can go very close to the center, and there's not really any issues that go into the center. So I can create, very small lines in the very small circles within the center. I can even create a line if I bring up my line tool. Let's say I wanted to create a line here with a stroke. And I can create a lot of things close to the center. And sometimes that's hard to do. And once you're done with this, maybe you don't want those red circles in the middle. Maybe they're just kind of not what you're thinking of. And what you can do is you can just select it and just swap out, or just make sure that the fill is none. Awesome. And that way you can get the mandala or circular pattern that you want. And that's using the rotate technique. And that's the final technique. So we'll just go back to our 4 little objects here, our examples of our techniques. And that was it. There's 4 ways to make a mandala circular pattern. There's the pattern brush, the replace spine, polar grid, or rotate effect. And obviously you can experiment, figure out which one you like the most, or combine. You don't have to be limited to just one technique. You combine them, use the strengths of a particular technique, and combine them together so you can create something totally unique. But yeah, that's been it for today. My name is Christian, and let me know if this has been helpful for you. And also let me know if you guys have any tips with Illustrator. I'm always looking to learn. And that'll be it for today. Take care and have a good one.